right, welcome to Motherhood Unfiltered, straight shots, no chasers. It's your girl, Brooke Ivy, and I got Dozier with us today. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so we promised you we was gonna give it to you real rap raw. I had to bring my best friend Brooke Ivy back in for the Straight Shots No Chasers version of the first episode because it was giving slightly vanilla and we needed Rocky Road. Okay, so we're gonna bring her back in. I'm gonna peel back her edges and we finna get it popping. But first we always must start with a toast, a straight shot. Okay. Ain't no running this time, friend. Don't run from me, friend. All right. We're toasting to bald honesty.
Honesty. Hmm. Okay, let's get into this honesty then. I'm here for it. Let's go.
All right. So, first, we're going to start off with a little game I like to call the Mother Minute. And in this minute, I'm going to run you through some this or that type of scenarios. And you're going to give me your quick, most true, honest answer. So, let's get it started with the Mother Minute. All right. First one, light skinned men or dark skinned men?
Chocolate. Look at me.
All right. The size of the boat or the motion in the ocean?
Can I keep both?
One or the other.
Bum, 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 bum. I'm gonna go with size, cause if you ain't working with nothing, yeah, I don't know. Mm.
All right. As we are both drink connoisseurs, would you like a smoked old fashioned or a martini? Dirty martini.
Mm, I don't really like the smoked old fashioned, but I'm not a martini girl, so I would take a regular old fashioned.
Regular old fashioned is a good option. Okay. California or Tennessee?
Nat 10, you already know.
All right. MTSU, which is your alma mater, or TSU?
Ooh, I want to plead the fifth. um, y'all might be mad at me. I love y'all, my MTSU folks, but I'm going to have to go with TSU. And why? Because my mother went there, a lot of my family went there, friends, and it's just the culture. I grew up going to all the parades, Battle of the Bands, all the different things. So, and my high school was known as Mini Whites Creek. So, I mean, Mini TSU. I went to Whites Creek. So, sorry. I love y'all at MTSU though.
Ooh. All right. So there's a lot of beefs going on right now, rapper versus singer that's a rapper versus singer, all that. So I want to know very quickly, Chris or Quavo?
Um, I don't really get into all of the beef. But if I just have to pick one over who I like, it's gonna be Chris all day.
Okay. I was worried. And you don't have to necessarily be in the beef. We can just go with like who would you choose? So being that there's a very close second, I'm gonna make this a three-way, right? Kung Fu Kenny, which is Kendrick Lamar, Drake, or Rick Ross. Oh,
There was one time when I loved me some Ross, but after what I heard from Kendrick, and I only heard it because my cousin was here and he was going crazy, and I was like, okay, turn it on. Ooh, Kendrick. Drake needs to go have several seats and sit down. That's all I have to say about
I would have to agree. At this point, I think it would be wise for Drake to just, it's funny, just real quick. I watched this breakdown the other day because, I'm a huge Kung Fu Kenny fan. We have the same birthday. And in the breakdown, this guy talked about supposedly several times that Drake tried to squash the beef throughout their interaction, but all the efforts to squash were like social media efforts, like something people could see. And I'm like, that's not really truly you trying to squash it, right? That's like, I want everybody to see that I'm trying to squash it while I keep throwing shots. But anyways, all that aside, so because I wanted this to be fresh and off the top of the dome, I jotted down a couple of quick questions. So I will refer to my questions, but I need those answers to be crisp and on point. I'm gonna give you about a minute to give me what I need to hear. Okay, I'm gonna go bah bah bah. You got to start over and give it to me raw. All right. So, are you ready?
Ready?
All right. So, this is kind of a two-part question, right? What experience prompted you to create the podcast, and who do you think benefits most from the content? So, what experience prompted you to create the podcast, and who do you think will benefit most from the content?
Just honestly, um, having to make the decision basically to choose my family, my mother, or my child. Being served with court papers that that's what did it. And as far as who I feel like will benefit, I feel like all parents can benefit because I do want to bring on different guests with all different backgrounds, different experiences, stories, walks of life. But my heart is with single moms, working moms, because that's who we are, that's who our mothers were, and that's what we connect with. But essentially, all parents.
So, when you say you were served with court papers, was this something that just hit you out of left field? Like you had the expectation for? Because I think the viewers need like not a lot, but just a brief backstory that connects that thread. What caused this? You being served with court papers? What was it centered around?
So, I had come to a point where, I felt it was necessary to make some changes. And, I spoke with my son's father about, you know, just the toll being away from family was taken on me. Financially, the strain. LA is very expensive and it just doesn't make sense for me for what I do. I do not have to live here. I'm not in entertainment or anything like that. I have no roots, um, anything tying me here other than this person and my child. So, it was a situation where I went to him, asking him, let's figure this out. It may not be the most ideal situation, but let's figure this out. Let's figure out how to make this work. Whether it be us all move to a state where we both can thrive and both can do the things that we're passionate about and what we love. But ultimately, it was supposed to be a two-part conversation. The two-part conversation was just a setup for the paper. So I was served, um, I was served with, a restraining order, to keep from moving out of the state with my son and with child custody orders.
I can imagine that was just because you were going into it with a good natured intent, right? I can imagine that was an extreme blow to you, feeling like we can have a reasonable discussion about the matter and be able to move forward. Um, but so what I would ask is, prior to that, I assume you guys were already in separate spaces. So what was the transition like for you, going from a two-parent household to you being a single mother?
It was difficult. I'm not gonna lie, it was difficult because although it was my decision to leave, to step away from something that was no longer serving either of us, it's still a grievance, right? A grievance of what you thought your life was going to be, what you thought it was going to be for your child. I had never lived out here without this other person, and like I said, I don't have family here, so literally having to stand alone, with not a lot of, support. So the transition, it was difficult. It was difficult, as far as helping my son, with the transition emotionally, financially. So yeah, it brought us challenges.
What do you feel like was the most noticeable effect for your son in regards to you two splitting up? What was the most noticeable like thing that you saw that it was really possibly difficult for him?
Um, well, I think, because of the communication breakdown between us at the time, my son was being used as a messenger, technically. There were things I had to find out that were going on, dynamics changing in their household, um, where I'm giving things right on the spot and don't really know how to prepare my son for these changes because I just didn't have the information. So it was very hard trying to explain to him that no, mommy and daddy are not going to live in the same household anymore, because that came up, I mean, almost a full year after we had, separated into two households. Um, when I want to move back to the old house, when I want you and daddy to live together again, So, it was a big change for him, emotionally. It was difficult for him.
And how would you say he's adjusting now? Do you feel like he's become more settled and has a better understanding that you guys can support him just as well together as you can apart?
I think it's gotten better. It's gotten better because I think just from reassuring him and just continuing to express that, I just had to tell him, mommy and daddy love you. We both love you. You are so blessed. You have a room at your dad's, you have a room at mommy's. Now has a stepmother, a stepsister, and a baby sister. Like, you have all these different people who love you. We all care about you. um and just continuing to just answer the questions as they come up and reassure him that everything is going to be okay. Mommy and daddy are fine, but this is the difference between mommy and daddy living in the same household. There are just some changes that are going to happen and some things that are not going to be like they were before.
I think that's great. I know that a lot of us grew up, you, yourself and myself as well, in single parent households, and I think it definitely at least eases some of the discomfort, right? When the mother has a more positive outlook on the absence or like the separation from the father. I think that you and I both had a very similar situation, though, where it was more so the absence. So no matter how positive the outlook was from the mother, the absence is something that can be seen and be felt. So, I think looking at it as his godmother, I think that I find for him, I feel like it's a blessing because at least he's in a place that neither you or I got to experience with having the other parents, at least be able to be present and be able to be there to support and feel that, twice the love, right? Than, he would if it was like our experience where we kind of, most of the pressure was on our mothers. Do you feel like you can see that it'll be more beneficial to him, like a stark difference from what you experienced?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's one thing I don't want. That was the one thing I wanted to stress is that I am not removing you from his life by wanting to be closer to my support system. Let's figure it out. I offered, even, maybe by the time he's, let me have him while he's small, full time with me, with whatever scheduling that we figure out as far as, the time he spends with you, summers, breaks, whatever that is. And then maybe by the time he's 10, we swap. Never wanted his dad to be absent from his life. That wasn't the case. So yeah, I'm very, I'm happy that he does have both of us. I'm thankful that his dad is, you know, involved and invested in his life. So yeah.
So, what advice would you give um, single mothers after replaying like your rearing from a single mother? What advice would you give, being like, I guess twice removed from that situation?
So it's top three things. So the first thing would I always stress, and it's probably going to sound cliche because I'm going to repeat it throughout, this podcast series. Self-care. It is so important for your children to see you loving on you, to see you taking care of yourself, to not only just see, mommy, tired, always busy, stressed out, working herself to the bone, but we really need to show our kids, hey, look, mommy's a person. I'm going to take care of me too. So I can then give you all that I have. And that includes going to therapy. Therapy has been such a game changer. And I've gone, before in the past. But, it just having a third party, someone to talk to that's unbiased. Your family and friends are going to tend to take your side, or, people on the other side may, they may rationalize someone else's decisions, behavior, but it's good to have a third party to check you. You just like, no, Brooke, you were tripping. And, he was okay doing that. We all need, people like that that hold us accountable. Um, the next thing I would say is communicating with your kids. We grew up when in a time where with our parents and grandparents, it was like you speak when spoken to. You're a child, don't get out of line. Anytime we questioned, it was considered disrespect versus just us being inquisitive and wanting to have a better understanding of, okay, well, I know you don't want me to do this, but can you give me a little explanation as of why? Um, yeah, communication is key in any relationship, and our children, shouldn't be left out of that. Third, I would say, um, just validating your kids' emotions. We weren't allowed to emote. We were told, "What you crying for? You don't got nothing to cry for. You don't pay no bills. You ain't stressed out. You just a kid." But it's unrealistic to think that kids are going to always walk around happy and cheerful. That's not the case. We all go through a variety of emotions throughout the day, and our kids do too. So yeah, that would be my top three things.
Okay, okay, okay. I definitely agree with for sure the ones that you mentioned. I feel like the last one kind of been like a two-part in regards to like communicating in the child. I think that, like you said, that's a big category that a lot of parents nowadays, will be kind of chastised by their parents for like, oh, y'all too soft, or y'all too this, or y'all too that. And I think that the juxtaposition that we're in is when having a single parent, you put them on this high pedestal, right? As if they're not just like human beings having an experience too. And so when they fall short, it's frustrating. But also then with your children, you have the beauty to realize like, oh wow, my mom was just going through these set of experiences. But then you have to mitigate being triggered yourself because you're trying to allow your child to have emotions that you weren't even allowed to have. So then, like, and something you're not talking about often is gauging how much, how little, how to respond when it's immense, right? How to help them, because we know how our children may be received by the world, right? How to help them hone it in and be able to properly articulate their emotions. So, what I want to ask is, in regards to therapy, what do you feel like thus far are your top two takeaways from therapy? Like, what are the best two things you feel like they've done for you?
Um, Something we talk about a lot is just self-care. So much of your identity after you become a mom is wrapped in your kids, and you just, for me, I know I just get so used to the hustle and bustle, and I gotta do this for him, I gotta do this for him, that sometimes I forget about myself. Like, that is the number one thing that my therapist is always driving home. Okay, she told me the other day, listen, that is great, I love that you're doing that for your son, but I am not his therapist. I am yours. I was like, ooh, that's my wig. She was like, what are you doing for you? I'm like, um, you know, And something else is, I think we've talked about this too, just celebrating the small victories. We get so caught up in thinking, oh, I haven't made progress if it's not this big, huge amount of progress. And like, who cares about the scale? If you did one task that week, that something that you said, this is what I need to do for myself, whether it be for your career, personal, whatever, and you did it, then pat yourself on the back. You did it. So those are kind of like the top two reoccurring things that she's always, driving home. Celebrate the small victories, and hey, remember, you're still a person. Take care of you. Take care of you. Carve you out some time, even if it's 15 minutes in a day. Find some time for yourself to pour into yourself.
Yeah, I agree. A win is a win is a win is a win, baby. Whether it's like I put the groceries away, you know what I'm saying? I prepped the meal for the next 2 days. I washed some clothes and then I folded them right away. A win is a win is a win is a win. So I guess another part of that question I would like to ask is, what advice do you wish your mother would have given you? Right? Like as you look back, as you've grown, things you have experienced, what advice do you wish she would have given you?
Okay, so when I look back over my life, the number one thing that I see that was lacking, in my family, um, in my upbringing, was boundaries. Boundaries are looked at as a negative thing or limiting someone from something, but boundaries are necessary. They are so necessary for any relationship that you develop in life, whether it be, a colleague, coworker, a partner, a friend. People will take advantage and get over and manipulate if you do not learn how to set boundaries. And it's nothing wrong with that. But so many of us, especially women in the South, we are just taught to people please and, just, be little Southern women and go with status quo and not ruffle any feathers. But setting boundaries, I wish my mom would have set more boundaries, with us as her kids, with other family members, with people in general. So, setting boundaries.
I definitely think it's like a major key, the subject of boundaries. Like even teaching your children to set boundaries with you, right? Like there are things that we do as parents that make them uncomfortable. And I think that if more parents would have discussed boundaries and allowing children to vocalize, I think a subject for another time for sure is like a lot of children that experience verbal, emotional, physical abuse by like other relatives. And because they're like, please were not like respected as actually something to say, right? Like a boundary. Those things went unnoticed, right? And I hate that whole saying about sometimes your first bully is your family, but sometimes it's true. And I think if boundaries were able to be set, we could have mitigated some of that. And I think that our generation is the one that's kind of stuck in the middle of this like sandwich, right? Of like the baby boomers and the group next to theirs that has this like very traditional way of doing things, right? And then the kids coming up now, they're like, forget the patriarchy, forget the everything, let's just do whatever. And we're in the middle, like, there's balance here, guys. Like, yes, everything can't be traditional, but everything can't be by the seat of our pants, right? Like, let's talk it out, guys, right? So I know that we have a very pivotal role, but it does put a lot of the weight, right? The pressure. Something we talk about a lot. A phrase that I always say between her and I is like, our ancestors had been running red lights, right, with handling business as far as their emotional, mental, physical well being. And we decided to stop it, but we have like the weight of 4, 5, 6 red lights on our back when we decided to put it to a halt. So the energy expended is heavy. So definitely I think that some of us are having to create boundaries out of emergent need, out of necessity. But I think like once you catch your breath, you realize these were always needed anyway. They were always needed. So I have 2 bonus round questions. Okay. They're very to the point. They're very, I need, like, yeah, like I'm about to try to peel your wig a little bit, you know? So, bonus question number one, knowing what you know now, would you do it all again? And that means everything, my beautiful godson, all the experiences had, knowing everything that you know now, would you do it all again? And there's no judgment in the answer.
Are we saying life in California, life with this person? Can you clarify?
The whole experience, the last 12 years. Know what you know now, from the time that you met your son's father forward, knowing what you know now, would you do it all again?
Whew. Knowing that time is something that you don't get back, and knowing how much time I spent in mm, a relationship that did not serve me, no, I wouldn't have. It goes back to those boundaries and um, just self care and knowing when to let go, when to let something go, when to fold. Yep. So no. I love, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore everybody. Now, I'm pretty sure you can see my whole personal page that I post him more than anything. I love him more than anything in the world. So I don't want you to get my words twisted. I definitely do believe God put my son here for me to remember who I was and get the okay. No.
Listen, God hung you over the banister like Big Red off of the Five Heartbeats did. It said, my business hours are from, what do you say, 9 to 5,
Nights
8 to
like this, I wish.
His hair was, baby, the curl, the perm was, I mean, like, because that before that, you, nights like this, I wish that raindrop would. God was like, listen here. He was like, no more of this, okay? No more of this. But you know what? To just make sure that the viewers understand, I stand with you in solidarity, right? I have a situation where my son's father is not a part of his life, period, point blank. And I know for a fact, because I've said it for years, I think that God, I'm the oldest of five. I was like, I ain't having no kids, honey. I already got kids, right? And God was like, now I'm gonna give you the ultimate source with which to place that energy, that love, that passion, that care that you have into. But if I knew what I know now, based on the fact that I was trying to escape that that cycle of being a single mother, that cycle of not having a father present, would I do it all again? No, because I think something would have identified for me who I was. And I think that God still would have blessed me with the child, regardless of whether and I think people, like, they look at something, they take it so straightforward, like, dang. But the truth is, like, Anthony was always intended to be yours. Trevor was always intended to be mine, right? It's just, what person you chose to open the portal of life and bring him through with, right? So I stand in solidarity with you. I would have definitely done things differently. But I'm also grateful for the journey, because both of us taking that journey means that we are ameliorating some future trauma from our children's children. We are like, effectively, maybe we under some pressure now. My shoulders a little heavy, your shoulders a little heavy, right? But we are ameliorating, right, some of the pressure for those who are to come after. So if my job is to take on more pressure so that they can have a better life, I'm ready for the task. But so the next question I have for you is, where do you feel you went wrong, right? Or where, like, at what point were you like, when you look back, like, that was an opportunity, this was an opportunity? Give me 2 to 3 places where you're like, this was an opportunity. I mean, even before my beautiful godson got here, what were some opportunities, indicators that maybe if you that you missed the opportunity to separate yourself?
There are three instances that I can think of. So there was when I graduated from grad school. I had a small little intimate graduation party, and I just remember looking back at everyone, looking at the dynamic and the conversations in the room, and looking over at my person at the time, thinking, what the hell? It was just, I'm gonna be honest, the most immature person in the room, just from how he was acting, behaving, and I was just like, what? And then another instance, um, we had already moved out here. There was a situation where, we were on the outs, and we had been displaced because of an apartment flood, and we were both in staying with friends in two different places. And we had things in a safe, and something of mine was removed, and it was this whole big issue. That was number two. And then the third biggest one was when I was pregnant. Our entire pregnancy, we argued about my son's name. Um, I did not want to name him after his father. One, I wasn't married to him. I don't feel like I owe you that, as an unmarried woman. Um, there are already three people with that name. Not the full, but three people with the first name. And I'm just like, I want my son to have his own identity. But him, and he used a lot of manipulation to have other people try to talk me down, and tell me that, oh, you should do that, that's his namesake, and things like that. But it got to the point where he literally threatened to leave if I did not. And in that moment, when I caved, because I caved at the hospital, I was exhausted. After pushing my son out for 2 hours, after pushing for 2 hours, I could barely keep my eyes open. And when the lady came in there with the paper, I was just like, whatever. And I literally told him, because I'm doing this, I know you're going to think that you can control everything from this point out. And hit your girl is in there like, hello, hello, Holly, if you hear.
So I just want to, before I respond to my friend, let everyone know out there, if you're expecting, you can take your child home from the hospital without a name. Most people don't know that. You can name your child a month later, 2 months later, right? There are things we have been taught and been told by society that like we just don't all have all the data for. Um, but as a person who was standing by, that was very, like I was hurt on your behalf, right? Because I think that that's something that there should have been a balance for, right? Because I do understand legacy and lineage and things like that, but I also understand the sheer magnitude of what a woman's body goes through to create, obviously with the man's help, right, initially, but to carry and bring forth a child is huge. And like you said, because you weren't married, I think that should have been, a reasonable request. Like it could have been his middle name,
And
and he
that
chose
is
the
what was
first
on
name.
the table. That's what was on the table. I was
Yeah.
totally down for giving him, making his first name now his middle name. Funny story. I haven't really shared this with anyone, but hey, we're here in Unfiltered. My son recently came to me and said, "Mommy, who named me?" I said, "Well, um, I said, your dad, that's your dad's name, so your daddy really wanted you to have that name." He was like, "I don't like it." I was like, "Well, it clutched my purse, it took, because nothing, I don't know. Kids come out of nowhere and just, it's like, I'm thinking, where did this come from? What did you, and this was recent, and it wasn't even, previous times. And I kind of, I paused for a second, and I was like, well, mommy did have another name that she liked for you, but we went with your dad's name. And he was like, well, what was it? I said, it was Grayson. I liked Grayson. And then I was going to make your middle name your name now. And he said, "Oh, I like that, Mom. Like Grace." I said, "What?" I didn't even think because his, nickname would have been Gray, you know. But he said Grace. He said, Grace, because that's like something good. I said, hmm. I said, I never thought about it that way, Anthony. I said, but I like that. So who knows, where that came from, but it was just interesting. It was very interesting.
You know what I will say is Anthony can always change his name if he decides to when he's older, right? Like, you know, it can be changed at any time, actually. So not encouraging that, but I mean, I think that I identify very much with my godson, right? Because my name is like two namesakes, and I've always like most people know like my first name is not Dozier, but I've gone by Dozier for like since high school. And when I joined the military, people are like, "What's your first name?" And I'm like, "I've been going by Dozier before I joined the military. Like this is who I am." And obviously, I can't be Dozier, but you know what I'm saying? Like, when I asked my parents, I forget what age I was because in class, there were like several girls that had the same name. And so whenever they would call my name, everyone would turn and then the teacher would have to delineate who she was speaking to. And I was just like, I understand the purpose of a namesake, right? I was named after both my grandmothers, one of which was deceased at the time and one of which is deceased now. And so I do understand the beauty in carrying on a name. But I think when I look at everything, it's not really fitting of who I am, the name that I was given, right? It doesn't embody who I am, right? And I think that Dozier, which is my last name, um, it fits me just fine, right? So I completely understand that, and maybe one day he'll choose, to change his name if he wants to.
Yeah, I find that interesting. Just to piggyback off of that, it's another friend of ours. That we were talking about names and things like that. And her name that her mother gave her, she's just like, I totally do not identify with that. She's like, I don't look like it. I don't, when you look at that name, you don't see me. But the name that she goes by, um, is such a beautiful name and it's so sunny. It's so fitting to her personality, her aura, her spirit. Like, I'm like, oh, yes, you're right. And um, I can say my mom, I love my name. I think my grandma and my mom named me. I can't remember who gave which name, but I love Brooke Ivy. It's so fitting. I feel like it goes together well. I think in general, my mom did a good job at like naming. My sisters do have more traditional names, but it was the 70s. It was the time, but I think they still both flow very nicely. So yeah, I mean, not that I'm gonna encourage my son, but I'm gonna support him in his decisions. I mean, that's nothing that would hurt anything, and if that's what he wanted to do one day, hey, I'm for it.
So that's all I got for you, and I appreciate you for giving us, a straight shot, no chaser. For those who don't know, we tried this already, and she gave me vanilla answers, and so we came back and we said it's gonna be a no, and we're gonna have to give a little more sriracha, some what's that other good stuff called, like the chili paste that comes with like Mandarin or like Japanese inspired. I need a little bit of more with it. So I would like to ask you for your reflection over the whole conversation, over the whole last 12 years. If you could provide a summation reflection, what would that be?
Um, oh Lord, me summarizing all of this. Um, I don't know if I could really summarize that, but what I can say is I am now to a point where I am trusting myself again, believing in myself again, and just looking forward to improving and adapting some new habits, some new routines, some new hobbies, and just really living to my fullest. I feel like over the past 12 years, I've had to dumb myself down or down myself back for others to shine. And I will no longer do that. I will walk in my light again because remember, prior to that, we were planning fashion shows, we were modeling, we were dancing. I do none of those things anymore. And I really just had to stop and reflect. And like at one point, it's just like, who the hell are you? Like, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. So if I had to say anything, it's just, I have arrived again. I woke up and remembered who the hell I was and got the hell out of Dodge. That's it.
Well, honey, we're glad to have you back, honey. Okay, welcome, welcome, welcome. Shit. And you know what? I want to issue a challenge for both of us because we've both been like teeter tottering on this whole dance thing. Before the end of the year, we both need to be in a dance class somewhere, whether it's beginners, hip hop, beginners ballet. Like dancing is something that we both love so much. Right. I miss ballet. Like I miss, and get back into fashion where we decide to, or not. Do a little photo shoot, little something. But I want to challenge us to something that's on our list, and you and I will talk about that before the end of 2024. We need to at least have made an attempt to to dip our toe back in the water.
In the pond. I can agree to that. Yeah. Let's do it. Let's do it. We could even involve the boys now. Um Yeah, so that was it. I hope y'all feel like y'all know me a little better and got a little tea. But yeah, if you want to know anything else, or yeah, we might have to do a part three. Just let me know. Let your girl know. But like, share, comment, engage, interact, guys. Come on, give us some feedback. Where y'all at? Um, but like, I am so excited about the next few episodes. Y'all are gonna be ooh, 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 ooh. It's gonna be so good. So y'all stay tuned in, tap in. We out. Your girl has two more interviews to do this weekend, so pray for us, sister. Peace.